You're listening to Best Practices with Kenny Berger. On this podcast, we talk with the country's top trial lawyers about their approaches to every aspect of practice, from case selection to closing argument. All right, this is a special one. Sean Claggett is here live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Kenny, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. We had Jordan Logan from your office recently. I've had the privilege of getting to know a lot of the folks from Claggett and Sykes over the years. I remember you going all the way back many, many years ago, kind of when we'd see each other in different circles. But congratulations on all your successes and what you're building in large part just through your generosity of spirit.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm lucky to get to work with Jordan Logan. You know, I tell everybody that he's the best storyteller in our industry. There's nobody better at telling a story than Jordan Logan and putting it together in a visual format. So I get a lot of accolades that really probably belong to Jordan, but he's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that thing about A-level attorneys hiring A-level team members, you'll have done that and more. Sean, for folks who don't know you as well, can you share a little bit about your background and a little bit about your law firm?
Yeah, sure. So, I started out practicing in 2003. I went to UNLV Boyd School of Law. And when I went to law school, I thought I was going to do estate planning. Realized even though I got the best grade in my class for wills and trust, I didn't want to do that. I realized during law school that wasn't for me. And so I get out of law school, I had an opportunity to work at a big, fancy, highbrow firm paying lots of money. And I turned it down and decided that I'd rather do criminal defense, making $15 an hour, to my wife's chagrin at the time. But she was happy that I was doing something I wanted to do. And then didn't really ever intend to do personal injury. It was something that kind of happened by accident when the economy collapsed. Everything I was doing between criminal defense, and I built up a nice practice doing representing general contractors, subcontractors, developers, and also the nightclub industry. So I had a good group of clients, but then the economy collapsed in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and there was no money. And all my clients filed bankruptcy, and I was like, well, I need to evolve. And so I said, well, insurance money's always there. And so we started doing personal injury out of necessity. And I committed to learning how to do it starting in about 2010 and 11, when I realized I'm going to have to change what I'm doing. I wanted to be good at it. And so started going to every seminar I could go to. And the very first one I went to was Dorothy Clay Sims, who's amazing. And she opened my eyes. I was like, wow, you can actually go after these experts. And that sounds kind of fun to me. And then from there, I learned all about Rick Friedman and rules of the road. And then I learned about the reptile and then journeyed down that road for a while and became a pretty good attorney. And then in about probably 2018, I left the reptile world and embarked on watching CVN and all the great attorneys and picking up things. And Dan Ambrose came out with a really nice program called Case Analysis, where he was having lawyers talk about cases they had done. And I went to some of those and I learned a bunch. And I started to realize, man, there's a lot of good attorneys that do it wildly different. There's techniques, their styles, their personalities, all different. They all have great results. And so I realized that I'm just going to pick and choose what I like and kind of become my own lawyer. And the rest is kind of history. I've gotten better and better every year. I've calmed down a lot. I was just watching one of my prior trials on CVN with some teammates because we were looking at some issues in a case. Like, oh, we did that in this case. Let's go look at it. I looked at my own demeanor and I was angry. I was loud. I was like, whoa, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. So it's been kind of a fun journey to, I think, become a better attorney as I've aged a little bit.
Sean, let me ask you something. I've seen and been fortunate to kind of witness the rise, and it's been phenomenal. It couldn't happen to just a nicer, kinder, better person. I mean, you're just like a wonderful guy, What did you do to kind of structure your firm and in your life to really put as much attention as possible toward becoming a great trial lawyer?
Well, I'll tell you, there's an interesting story. So I have a good friend who convinced me to go see Dorothy Clay Sims. His name is Farhan Naqvi, and Farhan is an attorney here in Las Vegas. He is, I think, the best advertiser in our state. I mean, he's just really good. I mean, he's everywhere. I mean, he has done such a great job. I remember we're young lawyers, and we're kind of deciding what are we going to do with our firms. He's like, I'm going to advertise, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's the road I'm going to do. I'm like, man, I want to be a trial lawyer. I really want to be a trial lawyer. And so I put everything I had into that. And it's kind of cool because all these years later, we just had dinner with our wives the other night. And it was kind of neat reflecting on kind of where we both were in our careers. And we're both, I think very successful in what we do and have an appreciation for that. And so that was kind of neat. But, really being a great trial lawyer, before I got my first big verdict, I had done 300 focus groups. So people see, like, they see all this success. They're like, "Oh my, you came out of nowhere." I'm like, "Pro." It didn't feel like nowhere, man. For the 5 years I was grinding and learning and going to all these different classes and taking a gazillion notes and doing all these focus groups and really learning how to be better, it didn't feel like it was out of nowhere. A lot of people think, "Oh, he came out of nowhere." I'm like, it didn't feel like out of nowhere to me, man. I was grinding hard. The success, the external success, people started to see in about 10 years ago, right? But I was working my ass off for 5 years before that first verdict, so that when I finally got that big verdict, everybody was surprised but me, because I was already implementing my own form of big data a decade ago. And so I wasn't surprised by the result, but a lot of people were. So that's kind of how that all happened. I mean, focus groups are the foundation of my success for sure.
And so, Sean, let's talk about some about focus groups and kind of transition into big. You said data. Down here we're bad about wearing socks and probably bad about saying data instead of data. But I have gotten better about saying uh,
Nevada.
data. Yeah, there
Yeah,
I've
you did
improved.
you did well on that. I'm proud of you. I'm that
Thank
most Southerners will make that mistake, and it's, like nails on a chalkboard.
I got corrected in Carson City during a deposition and felt
Mhm.
kind of embarrassed. And I thought I'm not going to make that mistake again. It stuck with me.
Anybody from Nevada will stop what they're doing to correct you. In fact, the Reno airport actually has the correct pronunciation as you walk through the airport so people can understand that it's Nevada, not Nevada. We
Going
it's
back
it's
to
it's a real thing. Like, I've been
it
in
is.
trial. I've been in trial where the defense attorney, who was clearly not from here, said it wrong, and the judge stopped. He goes, "Sir, I've got to stop you. It is Nevada. Please don't make that mistake again."
That's what happened to me. Yeah. In fact, it was the court reporter who helped me. I said, "Thank you so much, Madam Court Reporter." She's like, "No problem. It happens." And the fact that I stopped and I thanked her, and it was like, "Thank you, thank you." It was a long flight. I apologize. Then on
We
breaks
we
we were
we we
doing.
are not we are not bashful here of correcting people on that
No,
issue.
I learned all about the silver mine
Oh, yeah.
um, that helped fund the Civil War school. I had a good
Yep.
time.
It's great.
Going back to focus groups, I mean, you done about 300 of them before that first big verdict. You had your own kind of version of big data. Tell us what it is that kind of drove you to spend so much time on focus groups and kind of for the person who may still have doubts about either the value of focus groups or their ability to conduct focus groups, how they can start implementing those tools in their practice.
Yeah, so I'll say this is that, if you're not doing focus groups today, that's below the standard of care. If you're going to trial without running focus groups, that's below the standard of care, in my opinion. I would say that any lawyer that would show up to a trial and have the jury be their first focus group is committing malpractice. So start from there. It's just a commitment. What happened to me is I was doing the reptile, and Don Keenan had asked me I took the focus group course that was offered, and Gus Brown, attorney named Gus Brown, taught me, and I was terrible. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. And after it's done, Don has me come into his office. He's like talking to me. He's like, I want you to teach focus groups. I'm like, I'm not qualified to teach focus groups. I just did the worst focus group probably anybody's ever seen because I wanted to win so bad. I could not possibly hear somebody tell me bad stuff about my case that I worked so hard on, right? It was like, I cannot handle this. So I'd argue with them and I'd convince them that I was right. And so Don says, well, the next course is in 4 months. You're teaching it. Well, being the person that I am, the last thing in the world I was going to do is teach a course and not have conducted at least 15 more focus groups. And so I go back to Las Vegas from Atlanta and I tell my team, I'm like, we're doing a focus group. We're going to call it Focus Group Friday. Every Friday, we're going to do a focus group for 4 hours. And I did. I ran 15 focus groups between that talk with Don and the next time I taught. So by the time I taught, I'd done more focus groups than most attorneys have done in their career, right? And what was happening is, and I didn't appreciate it, is I was getting to be a way better lawyer, way better. And, the unintended consequence of doing a lot of focus groups is you become really comfortable in front of strangers, i.e. a jury, talking to them. And it was shocking how much more confidence I had. And then, I incessantly watched, I read Blue's guides on jury selection, Lisa Blue's book. I watched Don Keenan's videos on jury selection. I was just like doing everything I could to learn how to pick a jury because I didn't know how to pick a jury. What did I know? And so as time went by, I got really good at picking a jury. And then, jury selection becomes a very important part in most states, not all. In most states, a very important part of the trial. And so, that's what happened. And it literally happened because I was like, there's no way I'm going to be teaching somebody else how to do this if I myself haven't done a lot of these. And the reason why I know I'd done about 300 of those focus groups before I did my first trial is I did about 50 to 60 a year consistently for the better part of a decade.
So, Sean, for folks who are listening who say, look, I want great verdicts. I want to be a great trial lawyer. I want to improve my community. Focus groups seem like an indispensable or very important part of that. And they want to start doing a focus group Friday or a weekly or biweekly focus group. What would you suggest to them in terms of getting started in that process?
So the first thing, it's all you have to do is get your team member or somebody yourself, just go recruit 10 people, right? You can do Facebook or, there's Craigslist is, you don't get the same quality as maybe through Facebook, or you could hire an agency just to get to people that want to make $75 or $100 for the 4 hours, depending on your community. That's kind of the rate. That it's probably closer to 100 with inflation, but so for $1,000 you can get a focus group put together. And then what you do is you write out, and there's a lot of different types of focus groups you can get, but a good one to start with is just writing a neutral statement of your case. And neutral statement means no adverbs, no adjectives, just the facts. All you're doing is telling the jury the facts, right? They can't be slanted. That in itself is a skill set, right? A lot of attorneys have a hard time not using adverbs and adjectives to describe what happened. Just the facts. And then what my first question always is to the jury is, what's this case about? I'm not telling them anything. I just read a statement. Now I'm going to ask, what's this case about? You'd be shocked how many times I've asked that question about a car wreck case that doesn't have a lot of property damage or something. They'll be like, fraud. This case about fraud. Like, fraud? Okay. And you can't even act surprised like I just did. You're like, okay, thank you. And then everybody else kind of talks about it. And they're like, okay, why was it fraud? Why was that the first thing that came to your mind? And then you start hearing them out. You're like, okay. You start figuring this stuff out, and then you go on from there. But the most important thing, the most important question you can ask in a focus group is why, or tell me more.
And Sean, let me ask you this: when you're in a focus group and you receive points from focus group members that would be critical of your case or would be seen potentially as a negative on the surface. What are you then doing to help either reframe, restructure, rebuild your case in a way that either accounts for that fact or kind of helps neutralize those criticisms? In other
Yeah,
words, what are you doing with the focus group feedback? That's a better question.
right. So the first thing you need to figure out is if you have a bad fact. We have a case right now that we're working on, right? And in that particular case, focus grouping it right now, we actually have a data study coming back. And one of the things that we're dealing with is a really bad fact. I won't talk about what it is because it's pending case, but it's a bad fact. And the question is, how bad a fact is it? Maybe it's not even a bad fact, right? So what you want to do is you want to figure out is the bad facts that you think you have, that you know you have, because you've been told this that they don't like this. A, can you reframe it to where you can get around it by addressing it and explaining it and leaning into it? You know, we have bad facts in every case. In fact, the trial I just tried, this is a perfect example. This case was tried and lost. We tried it in Provo, Utah. We did not try the first case, but my referring attorney did, and he did a great job after the loss, getting back on his feet, getting a judgment notwithstanding the verdict, and then a new trial that was affirmed on appeal. So did a great job with that. So he was really, really worried that our kid that was killed, so this is a right-hand turn of a big rig truck and a boy that was in a crosswalk on the walk symbol, but our kid ran into the street, into the crosswalk. Okay, it's just a fact. Our referring attorney kept trying to explain it away. It was a brisk walk. It wasn't really. I'm like, dude, you're acting like it's a problem. So what we did in this second trial is we said, hey, and this is how I did it with the defense expert. I was like, I gotta ask you a question. I've been in Provo now for 3 weeks, and it was cold when we were there doing this trial. It was like 30 degrees. It snowed a couple days. I mean, it's cold. I go, and I gotta tell you something. It's the craziest thing. I see joggers everywhere, everywhere. And you know what I see them doing? I see them running up. They don't have the walk symbol. They hit the walk sign, and then they jog in place. Jogging in place, waiting for that walk symbol. As soon as it turns to walk, they run. Okay to hit them? No. Why not? They have the right of way. But they're running. He goes, it doesn't matter. This is their expert. He's like, it doesn't matter. Can't hit them. Okay, just checking for a friend. No. But instead of being scared of it, we leaned right into it. We said, yeah, I don't care if my kid was running, doing cartwheels, doing somersaults. It's his crosswalk. And when you lean into the bad facts and you own them, you can neutralize them a lot. The biggest mistake we see, attorneys come in and they avoid problems. If you avoid it, guess who's not going to avoid it? And, you know, this trial that we just did, the defense attorney for the corporation is a very skilled trial lawyer out of Cleveland, Ohio. And he was brought in response to me coming in. And so I'd seen him in trial before, very effective. So I was excited. I always love going up against the best defense lawyers. I think that's what it's all about, right? And we were talking after the verdict had come in. We kind of waited a few weeks, and then we had a call and kind of talked to each other. And it was interesting. He goes, typically plaintiffs will overreach or avoid something, maybe multiple things. And that becomes his case. That's his angle. That's going to be his hook. He's like, you guys didn't do that once in this trial. You guys owned everything you needed to own, and you didn't overreach on anything. Because it made my job almost impossible, and it was an impossible job because we leaned into what we had to lean into. We owned it, and we talked about it, and it just changed the landscape of what the defense was doing. It made the defense look extremely unreasonable.
And then, Sean, in this trial, which, you know, for the listeners' benefit, again, amazing job by you and your team, was an $81 million verdict. I think I mentioned to you, I've got 81 on some golf balls that I have, but that's for the year I was born, not for an $81 million verdict. If we ever play golf together, you can have let's leave with the 81s because I don't think they make a 400.
We'll we'll have to
Well,
get those
well,
ones made.
on the big data side and the focus groups going into this case, will you share with the audience the ways that y'all utilized big data and what some of the big data findings were prior to this verdict?
Yeah, so obviously going to Provo, it's a venue that those of you that don't know, obviously on the East Coast it's not as prevalent as it is on the West Coast, but it's the home of BYU. It is, what we would consider the Mormon capital, right? It is very conservative. And I was worried that they weren't going to give a big verdict. Like maybe even I was like, man, the dad is telling me to ask for $140 million. Tell the jury $140 million. I don't I don't know if I can do it. And then I went through and I looked at the data, and we realized that, we look at what's driving the behavior, right? Driving the behavior. And it was this constant theme of not taking responsibility, blaming a child, and really poor oversight over a really bad employee, right? So kind of like those are the main themes that we're working with. And so I knew from the data, if we could make those central points and the defense was silly enough to bite at it, like take the bait and fight us on that issue, we could get a verdict above our average, what the data was telling us our average was. And so that's what we did. We set the traps for them to walk into, and they bit hook, line, and sinker. For example, I was going over just lies that we had in the records, and they wouldn't accept responsibility for one. I mean, these are black and white lies, like, disclose if you have any family members that work for the company. None. Well, the guy was hired by his brother-in-law. So there's no reconciling that statement. And there's a real sense. We knew that there was an anger level that was getting at the nepotism. So we're going to put that front and center and let them fight it. Dude, they fought it. It was so amazing. It was so great.
What
And so,
what was their fight? That they weren't blood related, so therefore it
no,
wasn't.
their argument was, well, it says if there's a conflict of interest. They're like, what? There's no conflict. I'm like, no, the conflict is you're his supervisor. You're hiring him. So when he's doing bad things, like in his training, he's doing bad things during his training, he's getting written up, he's being suspended without pay, but not terminated when anybody else would have been terminated. That's the conflict of interest. And so they kept making this stupid argument, like they apparently have focus grouped it or whatever they had done to figure out that was what they were going to do. We knew unless they completely own it, it's going to drive the verdict up. That they fought that issue the whole trial. It was really bad lawyering, not from the counsel in Cleveland. There was what I could feel to be a very strong lack of agreement between the two defense counsel. So you had a counsel that had been in the case for a long time from Salt Lake for the driver, and you had national counsel brought in for the corporation that employed him. There was clear disagreements throughout that trial in strategy, and the strategy that won out for the defense was the wrong strategy, is what I can say. I think if the defense would have probably adopted the other defense lawyer's posturing and what he wanted to do, the verdict probably would have been a little less.
Right.
But so the interesting thing about the data is the data said my best day was 80 million. I couldn't believe that I would get my best day in Provo. Even I didn't believe that. It's hard to get your best day. It just is. It doesn't happen very often. Just like you don't get your worst day very often, right? That's why we most of the verdicts that we see from the data end up somewhere between the median and the mean. So the median is the 50th percentile jury. The mean is the average of all of them. And those two numbers give us a good indication of where the verdict typically ends up. This particular case, man, it went $1 million above my best day. And it was only because of the way the case was defended by the defense lawyers.
And Sean, when you're talking about kind of setting out the bait and letting them grab it. I mean, you mentioned the issue with nepotism and this driver who doesn't sound like should have ever been behind the wheel for this company and in a position to kill a child. Can you give us another example of where y'all, chummed the water a little bit, knowing that they might come right in where you wanted them to be?
Yeah. So the training material, he was like when you looked at the training material, so their argument one was we had good training. And I'm like, well, if you're giving training to people who aren't paying attention, the training's not very good, right? And they're like, oh, he had these drawings. They're not little, like these are intricate drawings. You're not paying attention to nothing if you're drawing like that. Like these are like legit good drawings. This guy was a good artist. But he's not paying attention to what you're telling him. And it was everywhere. This was everywhere in his training material. So we brought that out, and we knew from what we had seen during the discovery, their explanation was going to be, that's just how this guy functions. It's how he keeps his mind set. So we said, sure. So we had to make that argument the whole time. Well, during trial, he was at trial every day. In closings, I'm like, you know what we didn't see during this trial when he was actually paying attention? He didn't doodle once. Not one time was he doodling. Probably because for the first time, he's taking something serious. Just a little too late. There's a dead child, And so that was another way where we just set it out there and let them, and he was able to explain everything. Like his guy's name was Rusty. He would spell his name Woosty, Roosty, Rooster. I mean, he had all this stuff. And then he had this like bizarre thing in the trainings and the comments. He would say, I like turtles. I'm like, did you ever go check to see if he was mentally competent? Like, was there something wrong with this guy? Like, what does that mean? Who cares if he likes turtles?
I mean, it just sounds like one of those cases where his best qualification was he was like married to the other dude's sister, or his sister.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He didn't even have a commercial license when he applied to be a commercial truck driver for him. He had just gotten his permit to drive commercial vehicles.
Sean, let me ask you this, because something you and Jordan, I mean, y'all's whole firm does a tremendous job of, like, y'all will find all the bad stuff, right? Like, you might find 10, 15, 20 bad things. In a truck case, a lot of times there's a lot of bad stuff. How do y'all go about deciding kind of how to really distill it down into your absolute strongest points? And even though something may be good, it might not be as good as another piece of evidence. Like, how do y'all go about deciding what to focus in on and what to leave out?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we see a lot, right? When you have like just a lot of bad facts. What we try to do is we try to create themes, right? There's going to be a theme, whatever the theme is, right? Our theme in this last trial was this was an employee who didn't care. Well, what does an employee who doesn't care do? What does he look like? So every time we could get a piece of evidence that would support it, we'd put it in a hot doc folder or whatever you want to call it, So this is the I don't care employee. Here's the I'm a dangerous employee. Now those two things may be different. I don't care and I'm dangerous are not the same thing. The I'm dangerous employee was I got a 106 mile an hour speeding ticket while I was employed by this company. I don't know how many people alive have gotten a ticket for 106, and not very many.
It's hard to go 106.
Don't ask Jordan Logan that, but I would
106.
I would agree. These people that drive these electric cars, they go a little crazy. Yeah. So, that's kind of what we try to do is get the themes. And then the other thing that the data does, and it's really fascinating, is it will tell you what issues are driving plaintiff verdicts to their decisions. You want to focus on those. And then you're going to see what's driving the defense jurors to their decisions. And you got to undermine each and every one of those. I hear people like, oh, you only need to undermine the top three. Bullshit. You better undermine every single one in your opening statement, and you better be ready to address it during the trial. So what we do with our opening statement, right? We literally have worksheets that we go through that have the timelines, the witnesses, what we call order of proof, right? Um, and we have the alibi worksheets. And so we go through and finish all of those. And what we know is from the data that if we properly undermine the defense strong points, each of them, and we prove our strong points, then we know that the data will come in, the verdict will come in accurately with the data most of the time. You know, it's not a guarantee. It's not like a magic wand. You know, it's just giving you statistical averages. If you try this case 100 times, you're most likely going to get in this range. It's also how I make my decisions to resolve cases. I use data to mediate, I use data to negotiate, and I use data post verdicts to make decisions, you know? And so it's just an important tool to have.
Sean, with all the talk we're doing on big data, share with our audience, I mean, if where that's coming from.
Big data has been around, believe it or not, for over 10 years in law. Most attorneys haven't ever used it. A lot of attorneys, probably even more attorneys, haven't even heard of it. I go around speaking around the country, and people just don't know what I'm talking about. So I had the fortune to be an adjunct professor at UNLV Boyd School of Law for many years. And I thought it would be fun to author a peer-reviewed article about focus groups and data and jury behavior. You know, so I'm out there reading academic literature, and this guy, John Campbell's name just keeps popping up. And I'm like, man, this guy, kind of cool guy, right? He's a trial lawyer. He's at University of Denver. He seems to have his finger on the pulse because I was doing big data with another company before I met John Campbell. The problem is when we were going in looking at the raw data, they were messing it up. Like their data analysts weren't doing it correctly. And my brother Seaton, who's very smart and savvy, was helping me because we were doing our own form of big data through 10 people at a time in focus groups, but do 15 focus groups. Now I've got 150, not 10. And so we were able to pull data that way. And so I ended up meeting John Campbell over the phone. This is pre-COVID. So, you know, we're not doing Zooms at this point. So we're just talking on the phone, and we're talking, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm going to be in Vegas. You want to grab dinner?" I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." I go, "But I got focus groups all day on Saturday, so it have to be Saturday night." He's like, "Yeah, me too. I got focus groups. That's why I'm coming there." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." So we show up, and our good friends Alex Alvarez and Bob Kelly from Florida, amazing tobacco attorneys, had reached out to John Campbell and me independently to have us observe their focus group in Vegas to see what we thought about tobacco litigation in Nevada. And so I show up, and there's John Campbell, and I'm like, John Campbell? Dude, we're here doing the same thing. And we fast became, John and Alicia, his wife, and I fast became, we're like family. I consider them family. I consider their kids my kids. I mean, that's how close we all are. I mean, I love that family. And when you get to work with good people that are doing cutting edge stuff, it makes this job a lot of fun. And John and Alicia are the cutting edge leaders in the big data field. I mean, there's nobody close right now, right? They're kind of light years ahead of everybody else. And I mean, some of the stuff they're working on, I am so excited about because I get to see it and toy around with it. And I don't mind being the guinea pig. Right. And then, so that's kind of how it all happened is John and Alicia are doing this data, and I'm happy to go out there and try cases and say, I'm going to rely on this 100%. It's going to guide every decision I make at trial. Well, I've been using their data and basing my decisions on this now for probably 7 years, 8 years, no, probably 8 years. And the results have just been amazing. And they just keep getting bigger and more accurate, it's a lot of fun.
And Sean, at this point, y'all are working together through jury ball.
Yeah. So John and Alicia do all the data studies. So people are like, "Oh, do you get a piece of the data?" I don't get any money from the data studies. But what I do and this is what's fun is Jordan, myself, and then this Amanda Mills and June Hong, who runs our New York office. We all kind of consult. Not kind of, we do consult. So people will come in and have a case. I will not consult with anybody if they haven't run a big data study because it's not worth my time. I know I can look at a data study, and as long as they wrote it fairly, and that's always an issue, as long as they wrote it correctly, then I can take that data study and we can put together a story that we know is going to be compelling. And so we do these 2 day, we call them work days, and we do 2 full days. And at the end of the 2 days, we've storyboarded out the opening, meaning we have it framed out. And then Jordan and Amanda will go to work, and over the next month, we'll create an opening PowerPoint that gets delivered. And all you have to do is go practice presenting that PowerPoint, and your opening will be amazing. And just have confidence. I mean, it's shocking how many attorneys don't have the confidence. They're like, oh, you can't do that here. I don't know. I do trials all over America, and I pretty much do what I want. I mean, we had a case in Denver last year where the judge didn't allow us to show a PowerPoint opening because we didn't disclose it to the other side 7 days before trial. I'm like, the rule is you have to show your opening statement to the other side 7 days before trial. Well, I'd go without a PowerPoint every single time if that's the actual rule. The judge was actually a great judge. I had a wonderful time in front of her, and the verdict was like 145 million. So that worked out. But all we did was I ran the PowerPoint on the presenter view, which I had practiced over and over and over again. So I just gave my opening statement. They didn't have the benefit of seeing the PowerPoint. But in closing arguments, man, they loved it because we were now able to show the full PowerPoint, and much of what we would have shown them in opening, we reused in closing.
Nice. And then Sean, when you were talking about the 2 work days,
Yeah.
the attorney, if there are folks who are listening who say, man, it sounds great, and they want to do a big data focus group with the Campbells, and then bring your firm or bring you on in that consulting role, would the attorney come out to Las Vegas and spend
Yeah.
a couple of days? Is that how that works?
Yeah, they come here. We always make them fly out here. It's not really pulling teeth to have people fly to Vegas, right? They typically enjoy it. Now, I will say that sometimes day 2, they ask to start later because they maybe caught a little case of the Vegas flu, we call it, from the night before. That's understandable. But yeah, so we just get after it. And we challenge everything, right? We're going to challenge everything you're telling us. We're going to challenge it. And the end result is oftentimes, it's always surprising when I see attorneys who just don't perceive, even with they have the data study. It's telling them that they would have read through it and understood it. But sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect there, right? Maybe they haven't read it all. Maybe they just read part of it. But there's some big problems. And then there's also what is even more common is we see a problem they didn't even address in the data study, which I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you can get the Campbells on contingency, you should get them on contingency because it allows me to then run as many focus groups as big data focus groups as we think is necessary. Because we have a case right now where I think we've run 4 of them. Because I'm like, I want to know this, and we didn't test this. I got to figure this out. And so we start toying with it, and it's a lot of fun.
And I mean, Sean, on the consulting side, again, for folks who don't know you, and again, your level of generosity. I mean, you're not doing this consulting work in a way that's paying your bills. I mean, you've got a thriving, amazing practice. I mean, to me, when I've seen you do this consulting work, it's in large part, just because you're passionate about helping people and passionate about getting better and better and better as a trial.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, Logan, and I, all we do every day is prep for trial. That's all we do. That's what we are trial attorneys. It's funny because people come in, and I do a lot of co-counseling, obviously, and they're like, oh, okay. And I have to always tell everybody, I'm like, hey, look, I've got amazing teams. And I have attorneys in the office that are experts in med mal and trucking and aviation, in bad faith, in premise liability and products. I've got attorneys that specialize in this, and they're going to handle the case. They're going to do all the depots. They're going to do all the discovery, and they're the best in the business. I will do the trial, and I will help us get ready for that. And, I'm here to advise along the way, but it's always interesting because I meet these people and I'm like, you're going to have to trust me on this. But if you want me to take depositions, then don't hire me, because it's not going to be what you're going to get. And you don't want it. I don't like any of the defense to see my style before trial. I don't want them to know what I'm going to do. I have my attorneys go and do the proper depositions, lay foundation, get the documents admitted properly in depositions, because one of the things we've been seeing is that the defense never brings their witness back to trial, right? If they're out of state, we got one shot at them, and it's a depo. So Satch Oliver has written, depo is trial. He's right, because in these cases, that's going to be the testimony the jury's going to see. And so my team just does an amazing job with that. So,
Sean, can we maybe talk about that for a minute? What's in place to have that team, and second, make sure the team is preparing the case itself for what you and Jordan are wanting the case to be when it does go to trial?
So the first part, the attorneys that are working, that are my lead partners that run teams, I've worked with all of them personally for many years. Secondly, we have these worksheets that we use with everybody. All of our teams fill out the same worksheet. So they're filling out exactly what we want. They know exactly what we want because we tell them, this is what you need to have filled out. And they fill it out real time. So by the time they're done with discovery, we have everything we want. And when we do go to work up our own cases, it's done. Like this trial we just did in Utah, I didn't handle anything until about a month before trial, when I said, okay, well, it looks like this one's going. Give me all the depots. Give me the key docs, which in this particular case, it wasn't a document intensive case because our little boy was killed. So it was really the training materials that I cared about, so that's the other thing, is just cutting through I'll tell you, one big mistake I see attorneys make is they don't identify the important documents. So they come in to see us, they're like, I've got 1,000 pages. I'm like, okay, well, jury's not going to be able to digest that. So what are the 20 most important documents? And then from there, what are the 10 most important? What are the 5 most? What are the top 3? Figure that out, because they exist, right? That's an empirical question. What are the most important documents? I mean, there's an answer there, right? You show enough people all the documents, they'll tell you what the most important are. So, that's kind of how we ensure that our own team is doing what we want. And I mean, what's nice is the way my building is set out, we have a pretty big building that we have. I have one of my teams right next to me, where my office sits right here. So I have an open door policy. People can come in and talk to me anytime they want at the office. And so they'll come in with questions all the time and we'll work through them. So that's the other thing, is that, whatever they have, they'll just pop in.
And Sean, are there people in between you, Jordan, and the team members who are working to ensure that those worksheets and that workup is being properly done? Is that kind of the team lead, or is it just that?
Yeah.
So that's the deal.
Yeah. So Jordan and I are there. And then what we have is team leads. And then those team leads, each team has, call it 5 on average, 5 attorneys on the team. So those 5 lawyers are working on one case. And so there may be a meeting and we'll get together with the whole team and we'll, talk to them about what's going on, or whoever on that team is most engaged, right? Usually you're going to have 2 or 3 that are real engaged day to day on it. And then you'll have a couple associates that maybe are working on a different case.
Yeah. I mean, this is an area I'm clearly very interested in, because what I've been working really hard to do the last couple of 3 years is like, all right, how can I dedicate as much as my time as possible toward being a trial lawyer? And this podcast is part of it, because I learn so much every time we sit down with great trial attorneys. And then one of the challenges I run into is where you're Because thinking like a trial lawyer, approaching a case like a trial lawyer, having the mindset of a trial lawyer is different than also making sure certain management things are happen, certain administrative things are happen, marketing things are happen. And for me, I'm better and more productive and happier, when I'm really focused in on one.
I I've just had this conversation with a dear friend of mine, and it's kind of understanding what is your purpose, right? What's your why? And if your why is, I want to help people in trial get the justice they deserve, anything that's not walking you in or towards that purpose, you shouldn't be doing in our line of work, right? So you have to then say, like I did, I need a managing partner. I need somebody who can take all the administration, and I cannot worry about that because it's not a good use of my time and it's not helping me walk in or towards my purpose. And you see attorneys burn out all the time in what we do, right? And then they'll resort to drugs and alcohol and bad lifestyle choices. We all see it. The way you avoid that is that you walk in and towards your purpose. Now, I have other attorneys where their purpose is, I want to be the best writer possible. Well, if I'm asking that writer, I need you to go take a depo. Okay, that's going to create anxiety. They're not going to be happy with it. And now they're not walking in and towards their purpose either if they're taking depositions and having to go to court and argue. They just want to write. And so what we do is we look for those people. We want to put them in those positions where they can be happy and be the most productive they can be. And so everybody has different roles in the firm. And it's just finding the right role for the right people. And that's I think that's important, but as long as you're trying, like I this morning, I had a 2-hour meeting this morning to start my morning off. Well, I worked out, walked the dogs, then had a 2-hour meeting. And it was dealing with like jury ball, just the administration of jury ball, like trying to figure this out, right? That stresses me out 10 times more than going to trial, right? And I love jury ball. I love it. It's just dealing with the details is like stressful because I don't want to think about it. I'm just like, well, just kind of make it happen. And so, but
I see Sophie's over there laughing on mute, like because this all sounds familiar. Like, I don't know. You decide. I'm good with it. Yeah, you go for it.
right, because like I don't care how it gets executed. I know this is where we need to be. This is where we're going. And I tell Matt Grant all the time. He's like, yeah, Sean comes up with ideas and we're 30,000 feet in the air and I'm building the plane as we're flying.
Matt's awesome. Matt's pronounced Granda.
Granda, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. He's your managing attorney.
Yeah, and Matt took our firm he's been our managing partner now for, gosh, it's got to be 8-9 years now. But when he took us over as the managing partner, our annual revenue of the firm was maybe 6 million, 7 million. And now we're 13, 14x that. Right. And that only happens because Matt has created systems, put things in place and made sure that the teams we have the right people. Obviously I am very helpful in that too. That's one thing. I help identify talent with lawyers and make sure we get them on the right team.
Yeah.
But Matt and I work together on that.
Yeah. Sean, got a few minutes left. Tell folks about the Outer Realm.
Yeah. So this is such a cool thing. So Nick Rowley and I have been friends for a while, not as long as people think, but coming out of COVID, Nick and I's paths intersected. And what drew me to Nick was his unrelenting giving to social justice around the country, right? And he is such a leader in that. And I was doing the same thing in Nevada. But it's like, you'd be shocked where you can't raise money. And I saw Nick change the law in California on med mal, right? Single-handedly, he willed that into existence. When every other plaintiff lawyer said, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. Well, when I saw Nick do it, I went to Nevada and Nick was speaking to Nevada Justice Association, and I told him, I said, "Hey, Nick, I'm going to put up 2 million." And Nick says, "I'll put up 1 million. If you put up 2, I'll put up 1." So we came out the gate with $3 million. And for the first time, we had a budget where we could meaningfully go after med mal. And we actually got really good changes to the med mal laws. Not as good as I wanted, but as good as we could get with the legislature and the governor, who's awesome, that we had. We have a great governor. The nice thing about Nevada is whether you're Republican or Democrat, we've been very fortunate to have great governors for the most part over the years. We have a Republican governor right now who's really good. But there's an election coming up, so I don't know who's going to be governor come January, so we'll see. So Nick and I meet. I take my family to see Nick get an award for the social justice he did. And I said, "Oh, we're gonna do this." And Nick and I started talking, becoming friends. Nick, Coach Emilio, Nick introduced us. So Nick, Rowley and I quickly became very close. We were at a TLU in Las Vegas conference, and Nick and Jacob and I were sitting down saying to each other, we need to start a conference that will focus on giving back instead of taking. Because everything about a lot of these conferences, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's just the way it is that it's all about how much business can I get? How much business can I take? Right? And that's what these conferences feel like. And it's just like, it's overwhelming. And Nick and I are like, we need to start a conference that's the opposite, where it's all about giving, not taking. And so we came up with this concept of the outer realm. It was Rowley's name that he loved. And I'm like, let's go with it, man. I love it. Outer space, kind of this different thought process than what plaintiff lawyers think about. And so we started Outer Realm, and we had the first conference in November, this past November, and it was invite only. And if you were invited, you got to come to, I think, the best conference I've ever been to, start to finish, as far as learning, motivation, laughter, friendship, all of that. And the big push that we have is the 3=7 club, which is we're really pushing lawyers to give 3% of their gross revenue of the firm to social justice and nonprofits. And the reason why we need to do this is that the social justice end of it is easy, right? We need to make sure we're electing judges and removing bad judges, right? So we need to get more good judges in and remove bad judges. We also have to fight tort reform and everything else like we're doing in South Carolina right now. But we also have to give to nonprofit, because we have to help those organizations that are making our own communities better and change the narrative of what plaintiff lawyers are. These billboard attorneys make it look like we're just a bunch of greedy jerks. And it's just not true. So many of us care so deeply about the community and making it a safer, better place. And so we need to start bragging about our giving. Not the amount of money we make, not all that. And so what we've done is we have a platform called In Trial that Mark Wade out of Atlanta made for us. It's amazing. And on there, we brag about our giving. We also talk about verdicts, because that's part of what we do. But if you're seeing somebody who's always talking about verdicts and they're never giving any money, you're going to be like, man, there's a disconnect.
And all, to make everything kind of full circle, we started a scholarship, my wife and I did, over at the law school a few years ago. And then we were fortunate and, went from making a $100,000 scholarship to a $250,000 endowed scholarship over a time period. And this past couple months ago, they had the scholarship luncheon, right? And you get to meet the scholarship recipient, and it's everyone who's created an endowed scholarship. So it's a great group, and the Supreme Court folks are there, Court of Appeals, but it's a wonderful kind of collection of the legal community. But it turns out that the recipient of our scholarship this current year is like the most perfect hire we could ever want in a law clerk, who's coming to work for us this summer, and then hopefully will stay with us next year.
That's cool.
I think there's probably a pretty good likelihood that he'll end up at some point joining our firm, but that never happens. I never meet him. We're never part of each other's lives without simply taking part of the blessing we've received and, investing it back into another human being. So, one of the reasons we do it, and there are religious reasons, ethical reasons, moral reasons, but also when we look at people like you and Nick and other folks who are philanthropic, it's like, why wouldn't we do that? I've got a good friend in Columbia who did very well for himself in the steel business, and he talks about, look, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. If you give enough money, it'll feel really good. Go past the point where it stings a little bit. Give more, and at that point, it'll feel good for you. And
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The amount of happiness I get giving to others, it's immense. My wife and I, we just did the same thing. We just did a $300,000 endowed scholarship at the law school here, Boyd School of Law at UNLV. And it was kind of funny. We just did it. We had a conversation with the school. We're like, hey, we want to do this. Great. And so we did it. And I didn't even think about it. The next thing I know, it's on it's getting in the media and everything. And people are calling like, hey, that's so cool. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, the scholarship. I'm like, all right, man, that's kind of neat. And, my wife and I always struggled. We struggled with our giving because we did it privately for so long. We didn't want people to know because it was our thing, right? And we weren't doing it for accolades. But what's changed is I need other lawyers to see that we give and we give regularly and it's part of our budget. That's part of the 3%, right? If you take 3% of your gross revenue, I don't care if you make $1 million a year. If you make $1 million a year, that's $30,000 budget you have where you can donate $15,000 social justice and $15,000 to charity. That is a big deal, right? And as long as you're doing the 3%, you always have a budget. Always. It doesn't mean you can't give more. My wife and I often do give more than that, right? Because we have that 3% is for our firm, because we have a charitable foundation for the firm. And then we have our social justice giving at the firm. But my wife and I have our own charitable foundation, our family foundation. And we've structured our fees over the years. And a large portion of our structures that come in fund our charitable foundation. It goes directly into our charitable foundation. And so it's just this really cool way of always having a budget to help. And so we're always there when people need us. And, you called, right? We just had this conversation and you were like, hey, we've got this tort reform issue going on. There's a group of us, Rally gave 50,000. And you're like, if you can give like 10 to 25, I was like, no, I'll give 50. And I could do that because I have the budget. It's already there. I'm not worried about it because it's already just a budget we have. Because I know what cases we've settled. And I just, like I told you, I said, hey, we're dispersing this case. As soon as it disperses, we'll pay out of that disbursement. And that's the benefit of having a budget is you can say yes. Just say yes to giving. And you do it with a budget.
that's awesome. And I
Yeah.
love the budget idea. I love the 3 for 7. It's
Hey,
something I never thought of it quite in those terms, but it's perfect. And we'll commit to doing the same.
Yeah. Well, and the more of us that do this, Kenny, it's going to make a huge impact nationally. Because if we're giving 1.5%, that's what we do. We give 1.5% to social justice, 1.5% to nonprofit. If we've got 500 firms doing that, that is going to be 50 plus million a year going to social justice. We can go change the courts around the country. We really can. Imagine being able to go after and change 50 seats a year. 50 seats a year we change from bad judges to good. Make a difference, but it's going to take a commitment from all of us. And I get asked this all the time, like, Sean, why are you still doing this? Why do you keep going? This is it. This is why, because I believe that we can truly make a difference in our lifetimes that will benefit so many others by having good judges that are not corrupt and not bought and paid for by special interest and corrupt insurance companies in corporate America, the Ubers of the world that are trying to buy courts and buy judges, buy laws. These type of companies that rape our wives and children should not be the ones that get to dictate who our judges are. We've got to coordinate our efforts so that we can ensure that that is not available to them, period. And if we don't, by the way, if we don't work together, and it's people like you, it's people like Rally, people like me who make this commitment, we get other people to commit one at a time, one firm at a time, and then they get a firm to commit. And eventually what we have is a group of attorneys who are all doing the same thing. And by the way, that's going to be who we hang out with. I don't need to be around attorneys that drive Bentleys that don't give. It does zero for me. Like, it does nothing for me. And I'm not saying you can't have nice stuff. If you give, have all the nice stuff you want. But what you'll find is all the stuff you're buying you think is going to make you happy doesn't. What does make you happy is when you give money and you see that that money helps somebody and you see the joy on their face. That's happiness. And that's the feeling of what philanthropy really does. And so these are all things that we can do together. And imagine changing the narrative from the plaintiff bar being these greedy advertising lawyers to a group of lawyers who give hundreds of millions of dollars a year to nonprofit. One of the most giving group of people in the country. Imagine changing the narrative to that. And all of a sudden we're part of that group. That's the group I want to be associated with. There's some very good advertising lawyers. I don't want to group them all together. But what I'm saying is I don't want that to be how everybody views, like, oh, they're an ambulance chaser. No, we're a justice. We're a justice doer. That's what we are. We make sure justice happens when people get screwed over and hurt or killed by the wrongdoers, and then when we do well, we make sure we're giving it back to the community, the very community in which our clients are from. So that's something that I think we can do a really good job of moving forward. And with people like you and Rally and myself leading the charge, I think we will see a meaningful difference in the next 5 to 10 years. I think we can really see a meaningful difference.
And Sean, I mean, the fact that you and Nick have used your platform, again, is nationally recognized, best of the best trial lawyers, to not go out there and try to farm for business and pick off cases left and right and make a pitch, but instead, hey, our pitch is join us in giving. Like, we're not looking to take anything from you. We're looking for you to join us in giving something back. I mean, that's just very admirable. Very admirable. And thank y'all for setting the standard. I mean, I tell this to people all the time who are further along than I am. Thank you for setting a standard and continuing to raise the bar so that we can have something to chase after. And I mean that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, Nick and I are just aligned, like, at the hip on this one, is that this is what needs to happen. It's just what needs to happen. And if we don't use our platform for this, we're no better than everybody else. We're part of the problem as a part of, now we're part of a solution. We are going to create a solution. And it's one firm at a time. And I do believe that the outer realm will be the catalyst of getting the attorneys to join this, because look, the one thing that we're going to do with outer realm is we're going to have special dinners with Nick and I. If you're giving 3%, if you're 3 equals 7, if you're in that club, you're going to have direct access to us, and you're going to have special events with us, because we want to celebrate those people that are giving, because it's that important. And that's who we want to surround ourselves with.
That's great. I mean, I mentioned, it's this group of, people here, I don't know, 15 or 20 attorneys. And I knew all of them, before. Some of us, close friends with a few of them, but the work that we've done for the last year and a half to help protect and promote the justice system. Again, a lot of people have in South Carolina. I'm not singling out just this group, but this group in particular, just because of my close personal experience with them. Now it's like, these are my closest buddies, I mean, these are people that I knew, and now it's like, yeah, I'd spend all the time in the world with them if I could. And we're looking at try to figure out cases we can do together, because we have such a good time hanging out because our values are aligned. because we're in it for more than a dollar. We're actually in it to like help human beings. And, for as many of the late nights and challenges and cost associated with it, I mean, it's it's been the most fun you could ever have, even though it's kind of felt like a wartime.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those when you can be around people that have values aligned with yours, it makes it a lot better, And so, look, I mean, this fight that you're having in South Carolina, it's a fight we were having in every state. New Mexico right now is under attack. We just gave to a governor candidate that we really need to win, right? And it's crazy because in New Mexico, it's all Democrats. And the special interest got a hold of the Democrats in New Mexico. Can you imagine Democratic Party choosing to do tort reform?
Now, I saw an interview recently. It was clips from an interview with Rahm Emanuel. I mean, I'm trying to imagine someone pitching tort reform to Rahm Emanuel, and the response it gets from a guy like that. But money infects and poisons a lot of minds.
It does, but that's where we have to be aware as attorneys. This isn't just a Republican issue, right? This is an this some of our best allies are Republicans because they understand that the Seventh Amendment shouldn't be messed with. Some of our best allies are Democrats because they understand the Seventh Amendment shouldn't be messed with, right? And so we need to make sure that we're viewing the world from from that lens of who cares about protecting the average person's right with respect to the Seventh Amendment. Because every time you do tort reform, you're taking away the rights that were guaranteed to us by our founding fathers.
And
That's what's happening.
handing over.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, it's a very socialistic thing to do because when you do tort reform, all that does is take the most injured, worst hurt people and then makes that burden a taxpayer burden because that's who's going to pay for it. It's going to be the state, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All that's going to end up being what's getting tapped into versus this $1 trillion corporation that hurt somebody paying the bill for which they owe. Makes no sense.
At a time of record profits and off the charts hardship, where is it that money should go?
Right. I was just wondering. Yeah. I mean, it's
Sean, man, I'm very grateful for you coming on the podcast, taking time. Always enjoy seeing you. And you're the same dude eating breakfast at 7 a.m. at a hotel as you are in trial, as you are on a podcast, as you are, shooting the shit in the hallway at a convention, as you are at your house out in California. It's just a real honor to know you. And again, can't thank you enough for spending time on the podcast with me.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Best Practices with Kenny Berger. Our guest today, Nevada and national trial lawyer, Sean Claggett. Thank you all so much for being with us and take care. Thanks for listening to Best Practices with Kenny Berger. This podcast is produced by my law office. We are a trial firm based in South Carolina focused on life-changing injury and wrongful death cases. Here's the deal. If you find these conversations useful, if you think they've benefited you or might help somebody else, please follow the show and share it with other trial lawyers who might appreciate it. Lastly, thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.